Each day that remained to the month was one of torment. Young Fu was not certain how much Tang had told the journeyman about the brazier, but an occasional coupling of his name with the word beggar made him suspicious. His constant presence in the workroom was sufficient explanation to Den that the new apprentice was in disgrace, and no opportunity was lost to remind him of it. True to his word, with the appearance of a new moon, Tang once more sent him outside. The regained freedom was so delightful that young Fu finished his errands as if by magic. Small Lee, when they were on trips together, complained about the unnecessary speed. Before your trouble, you used more time than I on the coppersmith's business. Now you go as though a yamen runner searched for you. Okay, and yamen means an official residence containing police, court, or prisons. So somebody like that was searching for him. His companion slowed down a little. He would not soon forget the lesson he had learned, but there was no need to run Lee breathless. Even Tang complimented him on his dispatch, which with he now accomplished matters. These remarks were tinged with the customary sarcasm, but young Fu sensed the appreciation of improvement that lay beneath. A year and more had he served of his apprenticeship. A year and still more remained. By New Year's, the period would reach an even half. Time would fly, and he would become a journeyman, earning good silver for himself and Fu Ba. She might then cease working at the bristle shop, for he would take good care of her. He had, he believed, a head above most of the other artisans. They still made fun of his welding, and old Sue raised hands in horror over his attempts to design. But in time, he would let them see. One thing he knew, he could read more characters than any, save Tang and the accountant. In the weeks that followed, life moved smoothly along on an even groove. Once or twice, old Sue commented favorably on one of Young Fu's designs, and the boy's satisfaction grew apace. Was this not a proof of the ability with which he credited himself? And then, with the unexpectedness of a lightning stroke, this small world of self-confidence that he had been building crumbled into ruins at his feet. One evening, as Young Fu returned early from the last errand of the day, Tang dismissed him with the suggestion that he go play a little. Surprise at this unexpected freedom held the apprentice motionless for a moment, and then he folded his leather apron, laid it away, and passed it into the street. For lack of something more exciting to do, he directed his steps toward Thief Street. The stolen goods displayed there on open stalls offered nothing of unusual interest, and it was not until he had turned into one of the larger business thoroughfares that evil fortune gripped him. There, in a jeweler's shop, hung a shining nickel watch, large and round, and strange to say, black of face. Young Fu had seen several watches in his lifetime, but never one with a dark face. He stopped and studied it. Then, following his fate, he had crossed the sill and asked the proprietor to tell him the reason for such a color. Sui, I don't know how to pronounce that, H-S-U-I, the jeweler, was stout and prosperous, with all of the tricks of the trade at his command. I do not recognize you, he began, but you are a young man of very great acumen. And acumen means like keenness of perception, discernment, or discrimination. So very sort of aware of what's going on. The valuable treasure, and here's a picture here, has been hanging there on display for 3 days, and you are the first with sufficient intellect to note its extraordinary appearance. This opening at once knocked down all the defenses which the youth might normally have had in the presence of a shopkeeper. He was used to remarks of another color. Open-mouthed, he stared into the man's face, charmed by this sudden acceptance of his own feelings about himself. In a daze, he watched Sui, and again, I'm probably just messing that name up so badly, take down the watch and then beckon him into a dark corner of the shop. Right there, Young Fu was given one of the greatest shocks of his life. Held in the darkness, the watch glowed into a live thing, and the figures upon its face turned before his eyes in so many tiny snakes of fire. He felt cold all over, but now that another thought of him so highly, he concealed his trembling and mumbled only in a shaky voice, "Si chi de hun." Sui, fully aware of his victim's state of mind, pursued the game. And only you, of all the people in Chungking, knew what to expect of this gift for an emperor. You must indeed be a much-traveled man and a learned one, for truly this is the first time that anything of this sort has been shown in this great city. Young Fu was almost overcome with delight. The hypnotizing voice droned on. Let me press this gift upon you. I can sleep without dreams if I know that it is in your possession. A sacrifice for me, yes, a great one, but then to meet with one of your intelligence is a rare privilege, and I am willing to pay for the experience. Do you mean to give me this precious gift? Asked Young Fu. Just that, insisted Sui. Just that. You may take the watch with you now. Ask only one small favor, that you sign this bit of paper, which my neighbor Liu will witness, and sometime when fortune is yours, send me the paltry sum of $5 as an acknowledgement of this gift. The neighbor appeared as if by magic, and before the youth could catch his breath, he found himself on his homeward way with the watch in his hand. His pleasure in the newly acquired treasure soon faded. To begin with, Fu Ba Ba was horrified at the debt of $5. We shall have to beg on the streets or starve, she wailed. I shall have no coffin for a decent burial. As this last thought, tears took the place of words, for the ruling desire of her life was to save enough from their income to purchase her coffin. She had dreamed of its presence in this wretched room of dyes, a sweet-smelling wooden box to be used as a table and chest until the day when she herself would occupy it in state. Now all of her hopes lay about her. Her son earned nothing, and she very little. A debt of $5 was something not to be faced, and all because this stupid boy had shown no more sense than to buy this foreign devil's machine. What do we need of a watch? She demanded shrilly. When I wish to know the hour, I can look in the eyes of my neighbor's cat and find out. Defenseless against this blame, young Fu blew out the candlelight suddenly and showed her the watch in the dark. Fu Ba Ba shrieked, It is some foreign devil's spirit come to live with us and disgrace my old age. What have I done that I should have a son so brainless? In the period that followed, young Fu returned each evening to face these same questions and others of like nature. He went forth each morning to be accosted by Swai or his clerk concerning the little matter of the $5 and the bit of paper. Under the combined torments, he grew thin. Flown was his presence of wisdom and self-importance. He knew now that never in history of the House of Fu had there been such a dolt as himself. Kind of a stupid kid. And then, as if he were not already miserable enough, the watch lost its power to charm. Originally, it had cost somewhere in America the sum of 98 cents. It had come a long way from home and was tired. One morning, in the second month of his possession, its mainspring gasped its final effort and all of its contents settled into peaceful relaxation. A few days later, unable to adapt themselves to Chungking's uncertain climate, the small fiery snakes grew paler and paler until darkness and light became one and the same thing. No good. It was worn out when I got it, growled young Fu to himself disgustedly, but for the first time in weeks, Fu Ba Ba smiled. Within her was the assurance that the incense and rice which she had placed before Kuan Yin's shrine had achieved the foreign spirit's death, and her scoldings lost some of their sting. With her assistance, $2 had been paid to Swai, but now the new year was upon them and the balance was still owing. Fu Ba Ba refused to let him have anything from her small store of savings for this festival. Better to owe a debt to a man than to cheat the gods of their offerings. That would only mean more trouble for the coming year, she told him, and who can say but that your actions have already placed us in disfavor with heavenly authority. The night on which the kitchen god left for the spirit world with his report, a week before the new year dawned, she had, due to this very fear, added to the usual oblation. And oblation means a religious or ritualistic offering, usually of something without life, in contrast to a sacrifice of living things. So an offering that usually wasn't of like an animal or something. Of sweetmeats, a few drops of wine, in the hope that his statement of affairs in this household might be less clearly rendered. This year, above all others, would she see to it that the gods had their due. But Swai, stammered her son, Swai must be paid. One day only remains before the new year dawns, when debts as well as clothing and food must be new. He will not stop until he finds me, and then, frantic with worry, Fu Ba Ba interrupted relentlessly. That is your affair. You brought the watch. Now it is for you to manage your creditor. Miserably, young Fu went out the following day's tasks. In the afternoon, having found no possible solution to his problem of settling the debt, he decided that he might at least escape from Chungking and old Swai's search until the new year had passed. Tang, with true holiday spirit, gave all permission to leave early, and young Fu wasted no time in putting his plan into action. On several occasions, his mother had mentioned a nephew, the son of her oldest brother, who had said to live in the hills across the Yangtze. Her brother was no longer on this earth, but his wife, she believed, still lived. Someday she hoped to go see for herself. It would be a good walk in the country once more, and better still to renew the bonds with members of her family. And now it was he, not his mother, young Fu told himself with a rueful smile, who would first meet these cousins, and under what humiliating circumstances. At the river's edge, he asked a boatman for the privilege of helping to load vegetables, and thereby earned a free ride across to the other bank. There he nodded his thanks and walked slowly up the pass to the first village on the hill. His blue cotton jacket and trousers flapped in the sharp wind, and misty fragments of the leaden sky stretched out damp, cold fingers and clung to him. Satisfied with having found a permanent resting place. He shivered. Colder off here in the hills, and in the little money bag tied within his belt just 8 coppers. And here he was on the eve of the most important holiday of the year, a fugitive from home in Chungking, and all because he had been unable to resist Swai's flattery. Miserably, he shrugged the thought away and entered the village, slipped into the tea house, and ordered a bowl of steaming tea. The road winding past was busy with traffic. Ornate sedan chairs hung with heavy satin and gray tassels, pushed by on the shoulders of chair bearers in livery. Here and there a small open reed basket held a traveler who had made the arduous trip over the mountains, and threading in and out were hired street chairs, cracked and scarred, looking as if they might drop their occupants along the roadside any minute. Young Fu watched the unceasing stream make its bustling way down to the riverbank, there to be ferried across the Yangtze to Chungking. Exiles they were, living in other sections for various reasons, and now returning with their families for the New Year's festivities to Chungking, where they had been born. No man in all China but would make the journey home at this season, regardless of whether or any other circumstances that might be against him. The one essential was money and a clear record. And that, Young Fu reminded himself dismally, was just what he did not at the moment possess. Otherwise, he would now be with his mother in their room in Old Dai's tenement. Poor as he knew it to be, longing added to the distance made it seem more desirable than the halls in the governor's yamen. Okay, and yamen, we had just said, was an official residence that, like, police and stuff lived in. There would be charcoal in the brazier to warm his cold hands and feet, and as for food, Fu Baba starved cheerfully enough the rest of the year, but there was no stinging about what she considered suitable for offering the gods. And when the gods had partaken of all they wished, that which remained was shared by the household. Young Fu's mouth watered as he thought of delectable dishes, rich in Szechuan spices and swimming in incomparable sauces. Also, in the weeks past, his mother had made for each of them a new outfit of clothing and a pair of black sateen shoes, sewed with thousands of delicate stitches. The shoe soles, made of scraps of paper and cardboard found in the streets and pasted together, she had covered with stout cloth, and then with her needle had traced a design of symmetry and beauty. One night, coming down late from Wang Scholar's room, her son had been touched by the bent, weary figure devoting itself with such painstaking effort to the pattern of the soul. "Why do you spend your heart?" he asked. "One wearing on these slimy pavings will ruin them. Look at my sandals bought 5 days since. Already much of the straw is cut through." That there was truth in what he said, Fu Baba knew. Never had she imagined streets so filthy as those in Chungking. The footways and flights of steps were wet and slippery always with the drippings of the city's water supply. For Chungking utilized the rivers in more ways than one. Daily, which means like people pooped in it, basically. Daily uncounted coolies passed through the water gates, filled the buckets suspended from their carrying poles, and retraced their steps slowly and painfully back to the city heights. Daily was this done many times that the hundreds of thousands within her walls might drink and be cleansed. "Why waste material and strength if not to make good shoes?" she countered, squinting eyes that were half blind from loss of sleep. But thinking over lost delights of food and clothing would not gain him a night's shelter now, Young Fu said to himself. He paid for the tea and inquired the location of the cousin's farm. The name was recognized and the directions given. As he climbed the winding path between the terraced fields, the cold became more intense, and it was a relief to find himself at last descending into a little light valley where the farm lay. The house, solidly black against the night shadows, was folded in quietness. Young Fu rapped sharply, and someone called out, "Who is there?" "It is Fu Yuen Fa, the son of your father's younger sister, and I have just come from Chungking." "What proof have I that you are that one?" Young Fu recalled scraps of family history gleaned from Fu Baba's conversations and repeated them. After a drawing of bolts, the door was opened a crack, and a small paper lantern flickered over the outsider. Satisfied about the harmlessness of this slender boy, the farmer invited him in, asking as he secured the door, "Why are you here at this hour?" Young Fu explained over the tea and sweetened eggs hastily prepared for him by his cousin's wife. The family stood about him, shivering sleepily, while he confessed that he owed a debt and was hiding overnight from his creditor. There was much shaking of heads over such an affair, and the farmer counseled against the evil of buying that which one could not afford. In a corner, the grandmother, wrapped snugly in her pugai. Okay, so pugai is a comforter stuffed with cotton, wool, or silk remnants, mumbled her sympathy for the poor mother on whom he had brought disgrace. Young Fu became more wretched with each remark, and thought that even the cold winds and the hills might be preferable to this chiding. But it soon ceased. He was given a comfortable place to sleep, and the house settled into silence once more. It was still dark next morning when the others began to move about. The visitor stretched and then was startled from his drowsiness by a hubbub at the door. "Kuai Lai," called the farmer. Young Fu unrolled his comforter and went to join the others. Outside there was a strange whiteness in the air, and small pieces of soft down fluttered about their heads and settled on their garments. "Feathers," explained the youth. "No, snow," contradicted the host. Young Fu and his children of his household looked about them in amazement. "So this is truly snow, is it?" he asked the farmer again. "I have never seen any before." "I myself have seen it only twice, Once when I was a boy, and again this morning. It is very strange." They entered the house again. Young Fu had caught up a handful of powdery flakes from the ground, and now he showed them to the wife and grandmother. The old woman rested her 2 tiny bound feet on a hot brazier and puffed at a water pipe. She touched a finger to the snow in his hand. "In my youth," she said, "they would have called this a good omen for the new year. It is the wintry breath of a dragon." "Ai ya!" exclaimed Young Fu. "It is gone." He looked with dismay at his wet hand. The old grandmother chuckled. "With the coming of spring heat, winter dies. So with this, your hand was warm." Young Fu walked to the door and, stepping outside again, looked at the country about him, mistily outlined in the dawn. Hills, fields, trees, even the twisting paths lay bewitched under the spell of his white magic. Beautiful like white jade, he thought, soft like silk in a cocoon. Dragon's breath. He gazed about him with renewed interest. Dragon's breath, he repeated. Re-entering the house, he asked the farmer, "Have you 2 large Mei Xiang to lend me?" Okay, let me see what that is. Okay, that is a large basket with a hinged lid, sometimes round and sometimes square. "Perhaps," was the reply. "For what use?" "I wish to fill them with snow to take to Chungking." "Why trouble to carry snow all the way to Chungking?" "Lao Pao Po calls it the breath of the dragon and says it brings good fortune. Once there, I shall sell it to pay my debt," answered Young Fu. The grandmother removed the pipe from her mouth. "It is not wise to do this. You may offend the dragon." And then she stopped abruptly. She had been ready to predict misfortune, and no one knew. Let me see how much is left. Okay. Better than she, at the danger of mentioning such things as poverty and illness and trouble on New Year's Day. That was the surest way to bring them down upon one's head for the whole year. Let this foolish youth go about his business. She would have nothing more to say. She took up her pipe again. Okay, and we're going to stop there halfway through chapter 5.